Joining us now on the line, Chip Pickering. He's the CEO of INCOMPAS. Good afternoon there, Chip. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Troy. It's great to be with you.
All right, so we wanted to have you on to talk about some of this legislation that is making its way, trying to get some traction in the Congress, mostly supported by Democrats, and it's targeted at the industry that you represent. It's targeted at the big tech industry and to some extent bleeds over into the telecom industry. But I think it's fair to say mostly it is sort of aimed at the more consumer big tech or the stuff that we're accustomed to using, social media, search engines, mobile devices, and so forth. Why can't they just leave it alone? I mean, I read some of these bills. I didn't read all of them, but I read the summaries of the bills and got the idea. Tell us what's going on here, Chip.
It's basically, at this point, a political exercise. So if you look at the bills, they're not well constructed. They're not well drafted. They take an approach that really is the opposite of American judicial principles, that it should apply equally to all companies across all sectors. And instead, they're trying to target one sector and only 4 companies. And that's really no way, one, to make law, and two, it's no way for American leadership in technology. Our leading tech companies really are national treasures in many ways. Do they have issues that need to be addressed? Yes. But are they also platforms of competition, innovation, and is very important to really recognize right now is we're in a race against China for both the networks of the future and the applications of the future, artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, all of the advanced robotics, advanced manufacturing, advanced applications that will make the American economy continue to be the leader of the world. If we begin to stifle those companies that really not only compete against each other in the United States, but they're competing in Europe, they're competing in India, they're competing in China. China now has 4 of the largest tech companies in the world. 5 years ago, that wasn't the case. So as they emerge and rise and compete against us, we do not need to cripple the leading tech sector and what is driving our economy in so many different areas of what they bring to the American consumer and to the American economy.
Yeah, and Chip, I'd add quantum computing to that list, which you described very well. I've said and thought for many years, whomever dominates that space dominates the world. It's just simple as that. Yep. And China, as you know, as you've suggested, is investing heavily, mightily. I mean, in the way they do it, because they're communists, they just put a gun to your head and say, you're going to go do quantum computing. I mean, they extract those people with those brains out of society and they force them into that. I mean, with their very lives. We obviously don't do that, don't want that, and don't think that's the best approach in this country. But when I read like the American the Augmenting Compatibility and Competition by Enabling Service Switching, the Access Act. And I read that, it's like, nobody cares about whether or not their social media data is portable so that they can go put it on another social media platform. That's not the point of social media. And I think that they just don't understand that if you were to end up with like hundreds of, say, Facebook equivalents, then you got nothing. Because the whole idea is that everybody's gathered together. It kind of harkens me back, Chip, to the operating system wars, where we had Microsoft and IBM competing for the GUI desktop with Windows and OS2. And it's like, hey, the market finally sorted that out and OS2 lost and Microsoft and Windows dominated. But I don't know that was a bad thing. It was much more efficient. We ended up with way more tools and applications and services and value. That's the same thing that's going on here.
If you look back to those wars 20, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, and the world is completely different. And the market did sort it out, and competition did work. And as you look, many of the companies that they're trying to target right now didn't even exist 20 years ago.
Yep.
15 years from now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, who knows what new entrant, new technology, new application, new competition is going to bring if we allow the market to work in this case. Should we have good antitrust laws? Yes. I'm a firm believer, and INCOMPAS really started in 1981 as Ma Bell was being broke up because of antitrust laws.
Yeah.
And that action then led to just an amazing amount of economic growth and investment, innovation, and the world that we know now from technology and the internet and all the things that sprang from the new networks that came,
Right.
and then the new applications that came. So antitrust is a very important part of American economic history and principle, but it needs to be done right. And we need to really focus on how do we transition from where we are today with a new rival emerging in China to get it right and do it very thoughtfully, very carefully, and do it not targeted at one sector, but across all sectors, that we have good competition policy, good antitrust principles.
And when you look at this suite of legislation, you've got to think about, well, how does this benefit society? How does this truly benefit the consumer? I had a hard time understanding what those benefits would be. I think there's some really just some suspicious sort of forecasting on their part, or projection on their part, of how this would end up. I don't know that I agree with it, though.
Yeah, and that's why the Chamber of Commerce, other business groups, right of center groups, they're all raising alarm. They're all ringing the alarm bell. This is not the right way to do this. There are legitimate issues, but not this way, not in this political way. And many bipartisan members of Congress are saying this is not the right way to do this. The good news is I do not see these laws being passed. And so we will be able to withhold or withstand this onslaught of basically political statements and political signals, but something that should not jeopardize, especially as we come out of COVID and this amazing recovery that we're seeing. The tech companies are leading the way. And so consumers, and if you look at antitrust law, is based on what is best for the consumer, what is best for the consumer wealth, what is best for innovation, what is best for investment. And by all those standards, American tech is leading in welfare and consumer benefits and lower prices and new products and these new applications that we desperately need to be able to compete against China.
Yeah, and I think you and I would probably agree that we may not agree with everything that these big companies do. I'm not a fan of the censorship and the left-leaning tendencies. But the fact is, a lot of people also got pretty wealthy leveraging their tools and those platforms, and that just doesn't seem to make it into the discussion.
If you think of every Main Street small business today, they have a website. They use social media. They use digital media. The tools that, whether it's a Google or a Facebook or a Twitter or Instagram, or if you think about it, every business today uses those tools for their own growth, and they can take a small town and a small company and leverage that into a global market. Yeah, and that really is something that is not often people often forget that those services and those applications are helping small towns and small companies and Main Street companies every single day in multiple ways.
We got a couple of minutes left, but the scary thing is, if this were to go through, this really would transform all of our lives, because we're all using this stuff.
It would be very disruptive, and it would be very damaging to American leadership. And that's what I cannot stress enough. American leadership, the American economy as we know it today, would be put at risk if these laws were passed.
It's just mind-boggling. Well, hopefully we got enough of a firewall, to use a technology term, that would require 60 votes in the Senate, right, to get any of this passed. Yeah. So hopefully we can keep that together, and then Manchin won't sign on to killing the filibuster. Chip, thanks so much for joining us today. Really enjoyed it. Very informative.
It is always good to be with you.
Thanks a lot. We'll talk soon. Appreciate it. Chip Pickering, CEO of INCOMPAS and former representative, of course, of Mississippi's Congressional 3rd District, has been